Howdy, folks. Happy Wednesday. Happy Game 7. Second Game 7. We're going to talk about the Game 7 from last night in a bit. But Game 7, Colorado-San Jose, the completion of the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs will be tonight. But let's start with some pre-show stuff. Go ahead, Russ.
All right. So for those who may know The Odd Couple, there was an episode where Felix took a class to learn how to be a professional writer. And, of course, he lived with a professional writer, an Oscar, and it became a kind of a funny episode and kind of like a phony sort of class. Well, in that vein, Phil Collins is now having an online I'll teach you how to be a songwriter masterclass. And so here's what I gauge might happen from that. Yeah. So I can first see somebody asking a question, Professor Phil, what was the thinking behind Illegal Alien? And Phil would probably be like, I
was drinking a lot of tequila one night.
Bottles of vodka. Rather not talk about it, thanks. And then maybe we could ask Phil, like, why on the 2009 tour when he sang Invisible Touch Live, and I think he did this everywhere, but he definitely did it in Philly, that for part of the lyrics where it says, she will mess up your life, he made it a point to scream, she will fuck up your life. And so I would like to ask Phil now, what was the inspiration for that? And he'd probably be like, could it be 3 divorces,
Divorce 1, divorce 2, or divorce 3.
And just, I can't imagine what he is going to give up to basically help people write songs.
Well, okay, first of all, this is not exclusive to Phil, because if you watch YouTube and you see these, on YouTube, they have the commercials that you can't avoid, or at least for the first 15 seconds. Right. And if I had $1 for every time this master class thing comes up with, Marty Scorsese or Ron Howard or somebody, like some filmmaker or some musician or somebody, they're all doing it. But that being said, and the thing when you mentioned this that I immediately hearkened back to is, and I don't dislike her or like her or anything, but Adele, when she had her big album, I think 21, she was apparently, I don't know if she was struggling to find songs for her new album, but she enlisted Phil Collins. She contacted him or contacted his representatives or something, and basically was looking for him to write songs for her.
Right.
And it never came to fruition. Now the thing is, it's like, I think he wrote songs, and the gist I got from him is that she didn't like them.
Yeah.
I mean, you gotta, and I'm a big Phil Collins fan. He's a phenomenal drummer, great songwriter. His solo stuff was all gleaned from his personal turmoil, from his divorces. I mean,
right.
Face value and hello.
That's what I'm saying. How is he going to teach that to people? By the way,
channel your misery. That's how it is.
I think one of the songs Phil was attempting to write for Adele was "I Like In-N-Out Burger," and she didn't like that.
That's bad. Come on.
That's why it didn't fly.
So one of the things that is not well known is that Phil Collins, a lady from Vancouver.
Yes,
that was one of his wives.
There's a Genesis song called Vancouver.
Yep.
Yeah, and there's 2 kids. He had 2 kids, Simon and Jolie. And my best friend used to work with Jolie at Earl's in Vancouver, and she had a horse down in the stables called Susudio.
Are you kidding? Now we're going to get to Phil Collins' horse, his friends. Come on, man.
My best friend worked with Phil Collins' daughter. And you know how radio stations used to do those things where they're like, hey, this is Phil Collins.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. I'm here, and he says, hi, Simon. At the end, he goes, hi, Simon. Hi, Joel. You used to hear on CFox all the time.
Right.
There you go.
And Simon is a musician as well, and his daughter from his second marriage, Lily, is actually a very successful actress in Hollywood. She's been in a few movies. But and now
I don't know how he's going to teach somebody online about how to do this when we all know how hard it is. Period. And it's just like, come on, Phil. Like, I get you want another paycheck. Is this really the way?
And see, that's the thing. This is Russ. This is a sign of how, and you know, he's gotten married to his third wife over again, so he's eliminated the support payments.
Well, that's a smart tax move. That's it.
But I'm sure he's still paying. I'm sure he's probably still paying child support for wife number 2 or wife number 1. Maybe
he didn't realize when they had the album "Selling England by the Pound," it would be selling off his estate. He didn't realize that.
But this is and you know, he can't sing anymore, or at least not the way he used to.
Not the way he used to. He can still sing.
Right. He can't play drums at all because of his neck and arm problems. But he's still touring because he's got to support his life. He's got to support his lifestyle that he's gotten used to. And I don't begrudge him that.
No, I don't either.
Yeah, just don't ask me to pay for it.
Yeah, I'm not paying like $5,000 for a class so I could have a fleeting conversation with Phil Collins and then have him say, "All right, let me hear how that song is," and then he could tell me it's crap.
Well, I mean, come on, the insightful lyrics of "There's a girl that's been on my mind all the time, Susu Studio."
Yeah, well, I know.
Hello, Hockey World. Today is Wednesday, May 8th, 2019.
I'm Peter Tessier in balmy Winnipeg.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Rutherford. Oh, no, excuse me. I'm Michael Lagello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Okay, let's start with the game last night. A rather one-sided affair that I have to say that, you know, I agree with some of the opinions that if Dallas had won, it may have been a little bit of an injustice because it was so one-sided in favor of the Blues. But I have to tip my hat to Ben Bishop, who had a phenomenal game for the Stars. It was a 2-1 double overtime victory for St. Louis in Game 7. They move on to play the winner of San Jose, Colorado tonight. Russ, I mean, you've been sort of backing the Blues ever since the Binnington call-up in January. And just to look at that team and look at where they were and where they are now and look at how some of their players are playing, it's a tale of two seasons.
Yeah, I mean, Binnington's the reason. I mean, everybody else was still good. I always felt like all those other conversations we were having were just like because of the way the team was, not because of the way the players, except for Bouwmeester. We all thought Bouwmeester had really taken a bad turn.
Right.
And then we realized he was still rehabbing an injury. So it's like, all right. So we were wrong about Bouwmeester, but everything else has turned out great. But I still will get the occasional text. Well, when Binnington comes down to earth, he's not coming down to earth, folks. This is the guy. This was a Game 7. This is his first Game 7. He passed it with flying colors. If you want to say Bishop had a better game because he faced more shots, okay. I will let people in on this. I don't care about the shot totals. I don't care. Most of the time in hockey, when a team's leading the first period and they have 20 shots and the other team's got 5, a lot of times they're losing that game because of quality of shots and where they're taking them and all that other stuff, right? So, but I feel like there were a lot of good point blank scoring chances that Bishop had to stop. But same with Binnington. There was one where I forget who was trying the wraparound, and
Cogliano.
Yes, Cogliano, who literally could work on his backhand in his driveway because he could have ended the game had any kind of hand-eye coordination like he used to. It was just I felt bad for him. But Binnington made him rush that shot, and when he rushed the shot, Binnington was able to get like his toe on it at the last second and screw that play up. There was one that was going absolutely into the net, and at the last second, Binnington knocked it away with his blocker. Last second, like it was just like there were some plays like that where you looked at it and you said, wow, you know what? We were watching a goaltending clinic on both sides.
Yeah, but I mean, Peter, Binnington in the Winnipeg series, I think, was tested a lot more than he was, especially in Game 7. I'm looking up the shots, but I thought it was something like 52-17 or something like that. And I acknowledge what Russ is saying about shots on goal not being an accurate indicator, but I thought Bishop at times was standing on his head in that game.
Standing. He was using the force and looking like Neo from the Matrix all at the same time. I mean, it was unbelievable. I mean, like, what more does one player have to do to help his team win? Did he have to go down the ice and do a slap shot from the point too? Like, it was unbelievable what he did.
And I'm
simply put, you know what? If I'm the NHL, I just saw St. Louis go 7 games and basically look like they had 5 more OT periods to go before they got tired.
Yeah,
I would have had them all lined up and pee in a cup, because whatever Berube's doing it's unbelievable.
54-30 shots on goal for the game.
I think, look, I mean, they have some veterans, but they're not that old of a team. Guys like Robert Thomas gave him a big spark, and he played a lot of minutes late. Yeah. He had a couple of points. Like, that's somebody, he went 20th overall in the draft. I had him actually ranked 26th. I think we all got it wrong. I think the Blues were lucky to get him there. I think even a team like the Leafs, who I know were interested in him, could have drafted him instead of Liljegren.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I was told that I guess it was a Steve Simmons column that said that or an article that said that the Leafs were looking at Thomas instead of Liljegren. Thomas was 20th overall, Liljegren was 17th. And honestly, Russ, that is post-draft spin. That is, honestly, like, Liljegren has not been a big success. Yeah, I mean, I think he's been okay, but and he may make the Leafs next year as a bottom pairing guy. But that's sort of like, oh, let me bolster my reputation as a talent evaluator. I was going to take Robert Thomas instead of Liljegren. So that, I mean, come on. I mean,
all right, no, that's fine. I mean, that's fair. But I think that was a part of it. I also feel like somebody had said it on online, and I don't know who it was. Mm-hmm. But they were talking about the way St. Louis plays and how they tie everybody up. Well, I mean, if you look at the St. Louis defensemen, with the exception of Vince Dunn, not only are they all fast, but they all have a long reach. Yeah, and they do get to a lot of pucks first, and they do tie you up with their long reach. And that is something by design. Like, Edmondson kills you that way. We never talk about him, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, Edmondson, Gunnarsson to an extent. I mean, he's a veteran guy, but he's been tested in the playoff war. So having him as a 5'6" is not a bad thing. But Parayko was great. Parayko was great, but he almost killed them on that one play in overtime where he hit it up the side of his own net. But Bouwmeester, they re-upped him for a year, and Pietrangelo is one of the best in the league. Now, just switching to Dallas here, because obviously, that they lost, so we won't be talking about them until we get closer to the draft. I have to tip my hat to Jim Nill and Jim Montgomery for getting that team is further than I thought that they would get. The trade for Zuccarello, like the Nyquist trade with San Jose, Peter, was sort of an under-the-radar move. I mean, not saying Zuccarello was under the radar, but, they didn't give up an absolute big ton for him. And he was an impact player. Now, it was mitigated by the fact that he got hurt in his first game and missed a month, but he came to play in the postseason when they really needed it. And now there's indications that he might re-sign there. And if that happens, then the Rangers do get their third first-round pick.
Yeah. And you know what? I mean, one thing I think we've heard about Dallas as a place, while the team hasn't had the on-ice success of recent years, players enjoy playing there. They enjoy the vibe of the city and stuff. They, you guys were there last year for the draft. It's when the fans turn out there, it's a sports town, but they appreciate winning. Expectations are high in Dallas, and that's something that could play in the favor of Zuccarello. He wants to be there, likes what's going on, and that's good news for the Rangers as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and go ahead.
It is. I think Zuccarello's agent's going to tell him to test the market first, though, because he did himself proud. Think about what this guy has overcome in the last few years. A couple of years ago when he got hit in the head, he had to relearn how to speak again. It got that bad, and everybody's like, wow, what's going to happen to his career? He comes back, and he almost came back and almost didn't miss a beat. He breaks an arm, and this is a little guy. So for all the people that want to, bash the little players in this league, He
Mhm.
breaks his arm. He comes back, like you said, a month later, and he's making great plays. And he says he's not 100%, which I guarantee he can't be.
Right.
And he's making great plays. So teams are going to want Matt Zuccarello. I mean, it'll be interesting. He could be a pretty sought after one of those middle free agents where after the top guys go, teams start to look to him.
Yeah, and I have to say the other thing about Dallas that I think a lot of people were missing is the importance of their development of their young players through their American Hockey League team. Guys like not Heiskanen because he came directly from Finland, but at Lindell spent a good amount of time in the American Hockey League, and now he's one of their top 2 or 3 defensemen. And even directly from the Texas Stars team that played in the Calder Cup final last year, Dickinson and most importantly Hintz, who
they both were really good.
Yeah, they both played really well in the playoffs. Hintz had an injury in Game 6 and came back and didn't seem like he was really fazed by it in Game 7. So I mean, they're going to lose a big contract in Spezza. That's $7.5 million. Now I know that they re-upped Sagan, so that sort of counterbalances that cap savings. But if they add a player or two, this is a team that could get right back to where they were this year, next year.
Don't be surprised if all of a sudden Dallas is in there looking at other UFAs and taking a chance. Like, Tom Gagliardi, he's a competitive guy. And if he feels his team's on the upswing, I don't see why he doesn't give the green light to do some things.
Oh, I agree. One thing to note, during the playoffs, Nichushkin only played 1 game, right? He never had a goal the whole year. They're probably done with him. I'm looking at his contract now. Actually, yeah.
He's got another year. He's got another year, Russ.
He's got another year. He's not going to be at the NHL level, though. They're going to bury him in the AHL.
Or they maybe they find some team that thinks that they can trade him to Washington and have him play with Ovechkin. You know what I'm saying? Something like that.
At 2.9, he's just stealing money.
Yeah, no, I mean, the funny thing was we expected him to come back from the KHL and be an impact guy.
Yeah.
He's never been the same guy since that injury at his sophomore year. And he didn't really put up big numbers in the KHL when he left. So maybe they were right about him when they left. Maybe Hitchcock was right, but I still there's so much talent there. I don't want to admit that. So maybe he gets a second chance somewhere.
Maybe.
Other than that, maybe he goes back to the K.
Yeah.
We'll talk about Game 7. We'll talk about Game 7 a little later on in the show. Want to talk about because we really didn't touch too much on Columbus after the loss to the Bruins, and I think it deserved more of an extensive look. And my point of view, I know it's a minority opinion, but I really don't care. The Blue Jackets rolled the dice. They went all in, and everybody applauded them for it after they swept Tampa. I get it. My point of view is if you're a team that is borderline to make the playoffs and you barely scratch in, you have absolutely no business going all in. It's actually, I think, counterproductive and stupid. Now, in their instance, and Russ has pointed this out, they have a lot of good young players coming. So I get that. So they can afford to trade their first round pick and their second round pick and their third round pick. I get that. But if you're a team like Tampa, if you're a team like Calgary, who finished first in the West, I say, okay, you want to go all in, you want to add players that think you make your team more complete, fine. If you're borderline to make the playoffs, and they were by happenstance, they got in by a point or two. It could have very easily been Montreal instead of them that made the playoffs. Maybe you can justify it by the fact that you caught Tampa and you beat them. I consider what they did a failure because they lost in the second round. If they got to the Stanley Cup final, I can say, okay, they paid the price, they got there, fine. They didn't get there. They sold out. Panarin is as good as gone. We know that. Bobrovsky is as good as gone. We know that. We don't know 100% about Duchesne and Dzingel, but if I had to bet money on it, I would think they are gone too. So where is the bet? Other than proving to your fan base that you could win a round in the playoffs, which it took, 20 years for them to find that out? What was the benefit of this?
Playoff revenue, baby.
To what? 4 games?
It's a lot. It's $1 million a game, Mike.
Yeah, it's $1 million a game, if not more, probably
If not
more.
more. Yeah.
Mike, I understand if you measure it, if you measure the return only by the rounds of playoffs you make, then yes, it's a failure. But if you look at things risk a little differently, look at it this way. For certain, they've got 4 key UFAs who might not be back, but we haven't had a UFA crop like this in a long time.
Right.
They have just as much ability and cap space to replace those guys and shake the team up. They have some depth in their prospects. They gave up a lot. Absolutely. They tried to do something. And had they, in our logic, it seems silly because yes, you're inevitably going to end up against Tampa Bay. No one had them beating Tampa Bay.
Right.
They pulled off something.
Right.
That alone, an intangible benefit to the fans, is worth a bazillion. The fact is that if there was a year to go all in, knowing you may not keep any of the 4, there's enough people out there you can replace if you're aggressive enough and can. That's the difference.
Right.
That is the one difference in the UFA market this year that we haven't seen in a while. This is a good UFA market relative to what we've had in the past.
But you will grant, Peter, that would have been the case had they not gone after Duchesne and Dzingel. They were going to lose.
If they did nothing and missed the playoffs,
right,
they still had the same problem with Panarin and they kept a draft pick.
And with a top 10 pick in the first round, maybe
or maybe not.
Just so people know, at 19 years old, drafted like 117th overall, Emil Bemstrom's got 23 goals in 47 games in the SHL, 10 points in 19 games. He'll be on the roster next year.
Yeah,
so,
and I'll just to interject. I saw Columbus's AHL team play a couple games in the playoffs against the Marlies, and I think Sonny Milano could probably step into the NHL next year. He's had a couple opportunities, but I think the way he played, he'll get more of a chance. And we saw Texier in the playoffs. So, I mean, there are some young guys coming. I get that.
And I think Duchesne's going to stay. Duchesne really likes it there. So I think Duchesne will stay. Maybe Dzingel stays because he's a local guy. They're going to lose Panarin. They're going to lose Bob. I mean, it's tough. It's not great. But they not only made like $4 million or more, but they kept the fan base interested for next year now, because now they at least got past where they needed to. They got over the hump. That was a big deal. If they didn't do these moves, Mike, and they could have all these chips in the corner like you wanted them to and all these assets, they'd be losing their fans this year. And going into next year, season tickets would be that much harder. So that was the complicated part about this.
That's a hell of a price to pay to prove you can win one round. Really
think about it. The Atlanta Thrashers never won a round. They eventually went belly up.
Okay, I mean, we'll agree to disagree because
John Waddell's Atlanta Thrashers, in case anybody's wondering.
Right. Yes. What was it? Alexei Zhitnik for Braden Colburn, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was a great deal. Okay, the other team that we didn't get a chance to really hit on when it came to the end of the playoffs was the New York Islanders, who lost to Carolina in 4 straight. Again, people are lauding Lou Lamoriello and the Islanders for being able to recover from the loss of Tavares and make the playoffs and have a fairly successful season. I think it was based mostly on Barry Trotz getting them to buy into his defensive concept, getting a great performance out of Robin Lehner, who will probably win the Masterton. And, they had talent there. But as we started to point out last week, Russ, and we can illustrate it more now, they're in trouble because, and I made this point, when Lou Lamoriello was in Toronto and then they had that last place finish, they changed the narrative very quickly at the end of the year from the negative to the positive by signing Morgan Riley and Nazem Kadri to extensions. Here's the future. We've locked these guys up. We're going to add more players. Marner's coming. Nylander's coming, blah, blah, blah. Like all that stuff. It was positive after the negative. Now here, you made the best of a bad situation. Tavares walks. You keep your guys, Lee and Nelson, Leonard, all UFAs. Eberle plays well in the playoffs. No announcement after they get eliminated, and it doesn't sound like Anders Lee. At least he's gonna test the market. And if they lose Lee and Nelson on top of losing Tavares, Matthew Barzal should sue for non-support because there's not going to be a lot around him.
Yeah, I look at it this way, and I was on Sirius XM this morning, and I talked about this, and I'll give you a similar answer when asked about Anders Lee. So he says he's negotiating. That's great. There was a time when Tavares was still negotiating with the Islanders too, and then they stopped negotiating, and then he became a free agent, and then he signed with another franchise. So who's to say now that in the next month, if Anders Lee doesn't get signed, that he doesn't go that same route, and the Islanders lose another captain? Is he going to take the same wrath? Is Lee going to take the same wrath as Tavares? Or did Tavares take that wrath because he had that picture of him with the Leafs blanket and bedspread set? Did that sort of set off the fan base on that path? I don't know. I don't know the answer, but I'm just saying Lee is not really any closer to signing with the Islanders than Tavares was, and he's not hearing a peep.
Right. I think this, and Peter, I want to get your opinion on this. I think that Tavares took more heat because of the narrative that was set after he left, that he didn't want to waive his no trade clause to be traded. He wanted to stay there. And by doing that, he enabled the Islanders to not get anything for him. The thing is that at the 11th hour, it was between the Leafs and the Islanders. It wasn't San Jose. It wasn't taking $13 million. He was still at the 11th hour considering going back to the Islanders, in spite of how screwed up that organization is. And then he ended up going to Toronto.
But Peter, if you're Judge Judy, tell me the difference. I'm bringing this case to you, and just pretend you're an old Jewish lady. You could do it. Just tell me the difference between what's going on with Lee now and what happened with Tavares.
I think Tavares's approach was one that he had signed that extension deal that sort of made, the one that was undervalued.
Yeah.
And he's coming out of it, and there was a little bit of hope that, he was going to get paid and stay with the team, the fans that loved him. And I think he sort of he kind of played it a little bit like Sundin did for the Leafs fans. He said enough things that sort of gave them hope, while he really didn't mean it away from the ice. And I think he wanted to look like a good guy to the fans, but at the end, his decision was going to build resentment to them. And their reaction when the Leafs came back basically said that's how they felt. They felt betrayed.
Right.
And whether he betrayed them or not, only he really knows. But in their mind, there was enough said for them to believe there was hope that he wanted to be an Islander.
Okay, so using all of your expertise, in the last 4 years, Anders Lee getting 3.7, that's really below market value, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
So what's Anders Lee going to ask for now? He's not going to give him a break.
Especially,
no, he's going to want market value, and we're either going to see Lou Lamoriello work his magic.
Well, especially since, just to interject, especially since they have cap room because they didn't sign Tavares, and they have cap room because Eberle's contract is expiring and Brock Nelson's contract is expiring, and they got Josh Bailey for $5 million, so they have the room. They have the room.
Lucas Sabiza, Seidenberg's finally off the books, like all these things. There's tons of cap space. So if you're Anders Lee, you're 28 years old, and you turn 29 in July. You've got to strike gold now.
Right.
So it starts with a 7, and someone will pay him that.
Oh yeah.
Well, I think that, and we'll get into this because
Evander Kane's making $7 million a year.
Right. Well, and we'll get into this when
there's your benchmark
with what we were talking about before the show on Twitter. But the market benefits a guy like Anders Lee, because the number one center in the market is Duchesne. The number two center, if Lee hits the market, or if Lee doesn't hit the market, is Kevin Hayes. If Lee does hit the market, it's Lee. He can play center. He played wing, but he can play center. And in that narrow field, it's just sort of like the defense in free agency. You've got Erik Karlsson, who, if he goes to the market, will make $10-11 million. Who are the next two? Jake Gardner and Tyler Myers, and we'll talk about that in a second. But that's what Lee says. Okay, I can hit the market. I can get maybe I can get $8 million. You know, that's what Ryan Johansson's making. Maybe I can get $8 million. And if he gets offered that, Lou's going to basically tell him what he told Scott Niedermayer when Niedermayer got the offer from Anaheim. I would take it. Go ahead.
I'm going to give you an excerpt from Mark Herman's column in Newsday. So he's like, you know, Lou Lamoriello says you wouldn't and couldn't find a better captain, talking about Lee. And then so Herman backs that up and says, so it's a little surprising and somewhat concerning that Lee's and the team have never agreed on a contract. He's potential unrestricted free agent on a team clearly hungry for scoring and not flush with alternatives. And it goes on more than that, but it just, you know, that gives you the idea. And then it ends with, or perhaps Lee's agent, Neil Sheehy, wants the forward to be paid like the 40-goal scorer he was while playing alongside Tavares last year. And that is going to be the balancing act. But the idea is they have to figure that one out before they even go to the other guys and try and sign them. Because if Nelson ends up costing you more than you thought, Lee's price just went up. So Lee's the one that's going to cost you the most. You got to get him locked up first.
Right.
Or not at all.
Right. Honestly, Russ, and these players aren't as much of an impact to the Islanders as they were to Buffalo. But this is very reminiscent of what happened in 2007 when you had both Drury and Briere, who were UFAs. Mm-hmm. And the Sabres decided they weren't going to be able to afford Briere, and they let him walk. And they concentrated all their fire on Drury. And then Drury took the contract with the Rangers because – which is bizarre because it was both Drury and Gomez in the same free agent class. But
close to his pizza place, Mike.
Right, there you go. But the thing is that the Sabres opted for one over the other, thinking that they had the choice, and the other person chose to go someplace else. So in the end, they ended up with nothing. And then they even got more screwed because Edmonton offer sheeted Thomas Vanek, and they had to pay Vanek like $7.5 or $7.6 before he had really established himself. So I mean, the Islanders, they don't have to worry about offer sheets, obviously, because this is not a restricted situation. It's an unrestricted situation. But they better focus on the one guy who's important, which I would think is Lee, and get him locked up. And then you can work on the other guy. And if you lose him, fine.
Well, let's talk about the other guy for a minute. So Brock Nelson, they signed to a one-year deal at 4.2. Clearly under market value, but he did it because, hey, whatever, maybe, he still wanted to play there, liked it there, and thought he could prove himself. Well, he did. He had 25 goal a year. He had 53 points. He was a plus 20. He had 3 game-winning goals, and he averaged 17 minutes of ice time. He's a centerman. He's a big centerman. He's similar to Tyler Bozak, and he's about the same age when Tyler Bozak, I think, was looking for a deal.
Right.
He's going to get at least 5.5 a year, and he's probably going to look for 6-7 years.
Right. And factoring in all this, Peter, Leonard coming off a year that he's got one of the best goals against and save percentages in the league and played pretty well in the playoffs. You got to get him locked up on a new deal. So, I think they probably can get that done if they're if they don't think they have a chance at Bobrovsky, then going back to Leonard is probably very acceptable to them. But the other one is Barzal, and it's similar to what's going on in Winnipeg, where you've got a guy I think his ELC is 1 year away, so they can negotiate a new deal on July 1st. But you should be proactive when it comes to Barzal and get him locked up now, and that's against what Lou usually does. In Toronto, he wasn't proactive on Nylander, and look what happened with him this summer.
Well, he wasn't proactive on Nylander, but neither is Kyle Dubas. So I don't think you can pin that on Lou. And Lou is leaving and stuff. So Lou probably knew too. You can't pin that on Lou. I don't think that's fair.
Well,
but to your point, to your point, Lou's going to have to recognize that the game has changed a little bit. And with the courting period and all the different things that are going on and how there's value for young people, the leverage he used to have that he used very well, control his contracts and stuff, isn't there as much as it used to be. So either he's going to be a contract whisperer and he's going to find a way to talk to players and agents and keep doing what he's done, or he's going to have to adapt a bit. This is going to be the year that we find out.
Yeah, and Barzal has another year on his ELC at 863,000, but with if he hit bonuses, it'll be much more than that. But after that, he's a non-arbitration eligible RFA, like everybody this year, Connor and Line A and Marner, et cetera, et cetera. So it almost behooves them to get Barzal signed before some of these other guys, like work on a contract extension and get it done. And on July 1 at noon, announce it, because if Aho and all these other and Matthew Tkachuk, they set the market, then you're going to be probably spending a lot more for Barzal than you'd probably want to. So I think Lou has to be proactive with this guy, because he's, he could be after July 2nd, after Lee and Nelson walk, he could be their best forward.
Right.
Okay. Let's talk about this, because we touched on this, Peter. You said there was some whispers out of Vancouver regarding where.
Yeah, Ian McIntyre put an article out, I guess, saying that, Tyler Myers could be a good solution. Needless to say, Canucks Twitter, which is a very active group, lost their minds. Someone put up a tweet showing a picture of a bronzed anchor in Stanley Park and a picture of Tyler Myers beside. And so
I was going to say, they didn't put Eric Gabranson part 2, did they?
Well, that's what the fear is, right? And if I could find it, it's got a great caption. But I mean, so this is what it's come to in Vancouver, in that people are scared of what Jim Benning can do with some cap space because they haven't trusted his decisions already. Mm-hmm. And Tyler Myers makes a lot of sense. They have no faith in Chris Tanev being healthy. Mm-hmm. And now they're like, oh, here's the solution. And McIntyre is trying to say he's a viable solution without really understanding that Tyler Myers is not a guy who carries the play like you think he did. He is not post entry level contract Tyler Myers. Mm-hmm. He is a guy who has a ton of challenges to his game, and he's just not seeing the play right. I think he's still a valuable. He's a bottom 4 guy, like he's a number 4, but he'll be paid to be more than that, because there are going to be GMs who believe they can get more out of Tyler Myers in the right situation.
Russ, he's like, when I see a defenseman who peaks as a rookie or as a second-year player, the guy I always come up with as a comparative is Glenn Wesley. If you remember Glenn Wesley with Boston back when he was a rookie, him and Ray Bourque, he partnered with Bourque. He had a great rookie year. He had an okay second year, and then I think it was an offer sheet or a free agent deal that he went to Hartford, and Hartford spent big money in the day for him. And he was nothing more than a good compliment. He was a Matt Carl type of guy. Mm-hmm. I don't know whether that's Myers. Myers, remember, he won the Calder in Buffalo. He's this big, rangy kid. He got drafted the same year as that big defensive crop, Bogosian, Pietrangelo, Shen, Doughty. But he had a knee injury in the WHL that year, so his stock fell a little bit, and I think he was drafted in the teens. And then he had this great first year, the great second year, and then the Sabres were proactive and signed him to a big contract, and he was never the same player. Now, if you bring him in and he's for a reasonable amount, I think it's an okay signing. But if you spend 6.5 on Tyler Myers, you're just giving money away.
I don't know about that. I think he's rehabbed his image. I mean, we have to look at what defensemen cost now.
Yeah.
And he's a big guy. He skates fairly well. He takes up a lot of room on the ice, and he can move the puck. You're not getting Tyler Myers because you're looking for points out of him anymore. Right. That's the sale. but he's still a
Yeah.
useful defenseman. And there are teams that are so bad off for defensemen that they'll take him in a heartbeat. Like, you go look at the Arizona Coyotes, they could probably talk themselves into the fact that if they get Tyler Myers, they could make the playoffs this year. And maybe they're right. Maybe that is what they need.
And
So,
Peter,
the
and Peter, the one thing with the Canucks, I mean, I know Tanev has got a year left in his contract. If they go out and they do sign a big ticket free agent defenseman, I have a feeling they'll end up trading Tanev to clear the space. He's making.
And Tanev's got 1 year left. They can maybe eat a little bit of the deal, and off you go.
Right. And
here's the tweet. If
Okay.
you can read this.
Well, just read it.
Yeah, read it because you're a little blurry.
Okay. There you go. You can see there's the boat anchor, there's Myers. One serves as an object to hold you firmly at the bottom. The other is an anchor.
I don't think that's fair, actually.
Yeah, and I know that you mentioned Gardner in connection because
And he does log a lot of minutes, does he not, Peter?
Yeah, that's the problem, I think, is that when you have to play him a lot, you put him in positions where he is not the ideal player for that opposition.
Play him under 20 minutes. You do.
You got to play him under 20 minutes, and you got to watch your matchups.
That's why he's a 3-4. He's not a Now you mentioned Gardner in connection with this, and I don't know if there were any connections in terms of Gardner and Vancouver, but Gardner is the 1B in this scenario in free agency. If teams strike out on Carlson, and I don't know what there'll be. San Jose will be in it, the Rangers will be in it, and probably a couple other teams that have cap space will be in it. But Carlson's going to go where Carlson wants to go and where he gets paid the most money. Gardner, he'll probably be in the range of $6 million. I don't think there's any way he's coming back to Toronto because there's no way they can afford to pay him, even if they trade Nikita Zaitsev or other contracts. I know that the Leafs, at least in the media, have said, oh, we love Gardner, we love him back, but then apparently they haven't really talked to his agent. So it's basically the same stuff that came out with Bozak and JVR last year, where they loved him, they didn't want him to go, but they couldn't afford him, so they're letting him go. But I would be careful if I was a team spending money on Jake Gardner and thinking you're getting anything more than a puck rusher and a guy who could be an adequate second power play point quarterback.
All right, but again, if you're the Edmonton Oilers, you're interested in Jake Gardner. You are.
I don't know, unless they can get rid of the boat anchors, unless they can get rid of Chris Russell.
I think he'll cost a little less because of a little bit of doubt with his injury, but they need that kind of guy. They need that.
Well, could
they have that guy on their roster?
They do, but he blew out his ACL 2 years ago, and he's never been the same, and that's Sekera.
Right.
I guess they thought that Adam Larson was that, but he never was.
Yeah.
Now, one team that Gardner has been connected with over the years has been Minnesota, because he's from Minnesota. He played at Wisconsin, but he's from Minnesota. And if they do what we think they're going to do, Russ, meaning trade a defenseman, then maybe they go out in free agency and maybe Gardner is somebody they'd be interested in. But
actually, what was brought up on SiriusXM today was they might have a great interest in Anders Lee, who's from the area.
There you go. Right. That's and they they cleared space by trading Granlund. They cleared space by trade. They're talking about trading Zucker.
Yeah.
So they've Fenton has been able to move contracts that some people didn't think they were going to be able to move. So maybe that's the case. But again, Minnesota, I don't know. That core group is still Koivu, Stahl, Parise, Suter, and that's an old core.
Yeah, but Stahl's on a 1 year deal or one more year, and
they just
2 more years. Okay, that's fine. That's not going to kill him.
And he's the least of the problems. Yeah, he's the
least of the problems. The other contracts are longer. But if they did get somebody like Lee, that would really give him a leg up. And if they have to lose another player like Zucker, then they may be willing to do that. They may want to change things up a little bit.
Right. All right, let's talk about Game 7 tonight. Colorado and the San Jose Sharks. Like I said, it's the last game of the second round. We have Boston, Carolina already set in the East. St. Louis waiting for the winner of this game tonight. Colorado's going with the same lineup. They're going 11 forwards and 7 defensemen. San Jose, the big question, Peter, is the availability of Pavelski. They say it's a game time decision. If they're pushing it out this much, I would think that he's probably not going to play, and they're just using it as a diversionary tactic. But even if, maybe it's going to be like a Willis Reed situation with the Knicks back in the 70s, where they just want the guy in the lineup and he can play fourth line minutes and play on the power play as an inspiration, like Stamkos coming back a few years ago against Pittsburgh in Game 7.
Sorry, what? Say the question again.
Pavelski, do you think Pavelski? We don't know if Pavelski's going to play, but do you think how much of an impact do you think it'll have?
I think. Sorry, how much impact? I think emotionally it gives an impact. I don't know if it gives an impact on the ice if he's not 100%.
Right.
If particularly, and I don't recall what his injury was. Is it upper or lower body?
Oh, he has staples in his head from the
right. Sorry, I'm getting lost in all this. Sorry. Yeah. So if he's not prepared to go in and do what needs to be done to slow up Colorado, I don't think you play him. I think you believe in what you got there. You go for the win at home. You hope you get it, and you bring Pavelski in when he's healthy, which is going to be up against St. Louis when you're really going to need him.
I'll tell you what, I put him in line rushes, and I make the other team think they're playing, and I also to give them a round to the Sharks because they would get really pumped up. They got pumped up just watching him pump the towel the other game and on the sideline. So I think if nothing else, put him in the line rushes just to sort of get the team to react. But I'll tell you this, if I'm Colorado, and they won't do this because NHL coaches don't do this, I would put the foot on the gas early and try and, get a big lead early, because then you could really change the whole game with the Sharks, because the Sharks aren't exactly a great comeback team.
Yeah.
And that's what I would try and do, because if you just play this game tight, if the Sharks are going to beat you if you play that tight game and you're just playing for overtime. Like, they're going to beat you there.
Although down 3 goals in Game 7 in the third period was a pretty decent comeback, but that was the one for the ages. But Matt Calvert is not playing for Colorado. So, like I said, they're going with 11 forwards and 7 defensemen, which, with the youth that they have on the blue line, maybe it's good to have an extra blue liner out there. And, Makar has played pretty well, but I think if they're leading in the third period, they might want a more experienced hand out there. Now, and with San Jose, I think obviously Martin Jones is going to be a key. Honestly, Russ, the thing I've been impressed with San Jose has been not only Burns and Carlson, but Couture. Just, he's a phenomenal playoff performer. When they made the final a couple years ago, he was the guy. It wasn't Marleau, it wasn't Thornton, it wasn't Pavelski that led the team in scoring. It was Couture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a great player. And he's the guy you have to worry about.
Yeah, Russ, I think you're right. I think if he's half ready to go, you put him in line rushes, you get him out in the skate, and you start doing some gamesmanship, and stuff, and you listen to him too.
The board does that stuff.
Yeah,
and
you listen to him too. But if there's a question, if there's a question about his health or whatever he says, you've got to play your game without him that you've done for the last 2 series. And you've got to do it and not worry about what happens tonight, because he's going to be even more important if you move on. And
I'll tell you what, and I don't know how DeBoer is on his pregame speeches. I don't know if they've ever shown him on one or anything, but I would give this is Joe Thornton's possibly last game Rudy kind of speech to get this team fired up. That's what I would do.
Okay. Maybe somebody in the chat
Thanks for that support, Mike. All right, anyhow.
Maybe somebody in the chat has the explanation of this. I don't know if she is from St. Louis or what the connection is. But after Patrick Maroon scores the goal in double overtime, the Blues play Gloria by Laura Branigan. And
yeah, I don't know why that's their goal song. I don't know.
I don't know if I don't think it's their goal song. I think it's like this. It's like New York by Sinatra.
Oh, yeah, exactly. But they play it all the time. They do.
Right, it's their victory song. So I don't know what the connection is. If Laura Branigan is from St. Louis, it's not exactly like, it's not exactly a victory song. And I look for explanations. It's like what is it? What's this the Styx song? I think it's Renegade that they play. They play in Pittsburgh.
Right.
This is not from Pittsburgh. Why? What is that? What is
the song? Like they just like the song. Laura Branigan, did pass away. I'm looking it up. She's from New York. So
yeah. So
I like the song, Mike. But here's the bigger thing. Before the game, there was video footage of Jenna Fisher from The Office and other shows rooting on the Blues with a Blues jersey. I just looked it up. She's from Indiana.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think John Hamm was in the crowd.
He's a big Blues fan for sure. Like he's the one we all know is the big Blues fan. And I like the fact that John Hannah showed himself like not shaven and everything else, at least trying to look like a regular guy one time in his life. That's good because, guy looks like a male model just all the time. But Jenna Fisher, I don't know. I don't know why she's a Blues fan. That one is unresolved.
Well, I will go out on a limb believe me, I heard it enough times this year. I will go out on a limb and say that the Leafs goal song next year will not have anything to do with Hall & Oates. Because at a certain point, that goal song Russ, that was as annoying as the song for Team Canada at the World Junior.
Yeah, it really was. Actually, so it looks like even though Jenna Fisher was born in Indiana, she grew up in St. Louis. So good for her. So
okay.
It's nice to have some celeb hockey fans. It's interesting that they're coming from St. Louis. Like we wouldn't expect that.
Yeah. Yes. The other thing, and just touching on this briefly, because I just saw it posted a little while ago. Pagula Sports and Entertainment informed the National Women's Hockey League that they're severing its relationship with the league, and they'll no longer operate the Buffalo Buttes going forward. So they basically gave the franchise back to the league. I know that some Sabre fans basically would say, I wish the Pagulas would do that with the Sabres. But honestly, Russ, is this another step towards what the goal of those 200 players were in terms of getting the NWHL to fold so the NHL could step in and run a league properly?
Again, what is the guarantee that the NHL even wants to do this? There is no guarantee. They have never shown for 1 minute that they have an interest in running a women's league. All they've done is contributed to it. They let them play the outdoor game a little bit. They definitely want to be a part of it, a very small part of it, but they've never once sort of said, yeah, if everything's right, we want to run a women's league. Now, maybe they will.
Russ, there's been a ton of discussion around this particularly on Twitter, and some really interesting points. And one of the points that I've seen is basically comparing the women's NBA league to the NHL running one, and what the cost to the NBA is of that women's league, in that it's a loss leader. And that's fine. And I understand that the NBA is a pretty flush league with money, and the NHL is no pauper. They've got a lot of money and they can do things. Where this argument gets a little blurry for me, I'm not going to say it's wrong, is that if the belief is that if you either believe in the subsidy, or you say if it doesn't stand alone and people don't want to watch, then it shouldn't be there. That's totally fine. But how much is the NHL subsidizing teams that had no one in their rinks? How long has that gone on for? So they're clearly able to see value long term. They're clearly able to see that and prepared to subsidize. The subsidy that would be required to help keep a league afloat is a drop in the bucket compared to the money they've sunk into some teams. I mean, you think about what they did for Arizona, for Florida, for Anaheim.
But again, Peter, you are attacking this logically. This isn't logical because, again, I am going to guess that based on the fact that when everything was okay a year ago, not every owner wanted to be a part of any of the women's leagues.
Right.
a handful. I'm going to still guess that there's a lot of owners that don't care about it and only care about their team, their fans, their market, their money. And they don't have to invest in it. Like, it's not up to them. But again, when have you seen the NHL really put out big money into something that you said, hey, you know what? This may or may not work, but this is great that they're doing it. Almost never. I can't even think of something that think about the Guardian Project, Peter, and then,
Yeah, I will say this. The NHL has become a lot more savvy in terms of PR over the last few years. And when they get involved with You Can Play, which is an initiative that was spurred on by Brian Burke after the death of his son, and I think it's been a good initiative for the NHL to get involved in. I think, and I'm just saying, women's hockey the reason the NHL will get involved is going to be strictly PR. It's not going to be to make it a money making enterprise, because I don't think it ever will make money. But I think in terms of generating interest in the game, keeping it alive, having an avenue for young girls to play, that is what the NHL will want to promote.
Well, again, I go back to the NHL would certainly love to have scores of female fans, and actually they do. So now, if they port over this other league, they may be just drawing in some new fans, but they may be splitting the allegiance for female fans that are already sold on the NHL to now go and support that.
Russ,
help them.
I think if we look at this as the model of a league that just runs in tandem with some NHL seed money and annual revenue, that it exists in its own channel, that's a real possibility and it should be feared. But that's why you have to start saying, it doesn't work this way. Why is throwing more money at doing it that way a good thing? No, you have to change the parameters on this. You have to have a paradigm shift in how the product is provided and get a little more creative with it. So the idea being, bring some events in to some of the NHL events. You know what? You have all these other games going with the Stadium Series. Bring a women's game in. Do that frequently. Let's bring it in with the Heritage Classic. What's going to happen in Regina? Do that. So you got to get a little more creative. You got to piggyback on things and make it a value proposition so that you want to draw fans in. And remember, all we heard about with the Sunbelt teams for the first 20 years was, this is going to take time, and then hockey's going to grow in these areas. Voila, we get an Austin Matthews. The same, it's going to work for both genders, but you've got to get a little more creative so you don't get into a competition based on women wanting to support a women's league only and not supporting the NHL. That's a legit concern, but I think there are ways around it. You got to get creative.
And logical question. The one logical question is, where's next year's Heritage Classic?
Regina.
Okay. So what are the odds of them not selling out that game?
Slim.
15%?
Slim.
Okay. Slim. So what are the odds that if they include a women's game, that is going to either enhance their revenue, put more fannies in the seats, or change sponsorship or online?
What cost though? What's the cost? Right. But I think you can add it in there without it being a massive cost. Now it'd be better to actually do it at the Stadium Series one. In all frankness, the Heritage Classic, there isn't a team in Regina. There was a team in Calgary, but that league's gone. So if you're going to just take the NWHL, or the whatever it is, National Women's Hockey, and then find some avenues to bring them in. It doesn't have to be all in, but start bringing a little more inclusivity to them into the NHL stuff and see what you learn from it.
Hey,
it's just a starting point.
I'd be all for it, but unless there's a way to make money on it, I don't think they're doing it.
Yeah, and just to point out, like, I know that in Buffalo, they had an Amerks game in Buffalo once or twice a year. In Toronto, they have the Marlies playing at Scotiabank Arena in the afternoon before a Leafs game. And, obviously the tickets are different. They sell for the one, and they empty the building and they come in. I mean, that's something where you can piggyback a women's hockey game, an NWHL or whatever entity comes up, that is a way to generate interest, maybe to have them play in the same building. Now, I know there's cost to that, but if you want to make it an enterprise that is more successful, you may have to do things like that. So, I mean, we'll see.
All right, so Chris Gebhardt in our chat room may have the answer to the Gloria thing.
Okay.
4 to 5 players were in a bar in Philly, and bar in St. Louis, watching the Eagles, and the bar DJ played Gloria every time the Eagles scored. So they tried it the next game and it won, and it stuck. So then they kept playing it. Okay.
Last note here. The magnet of chaos, known as the Ottawa Senators, as reported by John Shannon of Sportsnet. Senators Chief Operating Officer Nick Ruskowski is leaving his post. That's on top of other guys like Tom Anselmi, who used to be with the Leafs. He was dismissed by Eugene Melnick. That organization continues to be the Eastern tire fire in the NHL.
I don't even know what to say.
Yes. Okay, for Peter Tessier, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.